Tonight, let your heart become quiet before the story begins. As you rest, remember that every beginning belongs to God. Before there was noise, before there was fear, before there was pain in the human heart, there was God, and there was His holy peace. The earth was not yet shaped the way we know it now. The sky had not stretched above the land. The seas had not gathered into their place. The trees had not lifted their branches toward the light, and no human voice had yet spoken under heaven. But God was there. And from His presence, light came. This is where every tired soul can begin again, not with pressure, not with shame, not with the weight of yesterday, but with the gentle truth that God knows how to bring light into places that feel empty. When God spoke, darkness did not argue. Light appeared. And the first lesson for the heart is simple. What feels formless in your life is not hopeless when God is near. Maybe tonight, your thoughts feel scattered. Maybe your heart feels like a place without shape. Maybe you have carried confusion for too long. But the God who shaped the first morning still knows how to bring order to a restless soul. He separated light from darkness. He gave each thing its place. He formed rhythm, evening and morning, rest and beginning, silence and song. And this rhythm reminds us that life is not meant to be lived in endless striving. There is a time to move, and there is a time to stop. There is a time to speak, and there is a time to breathe. There is a time to work, and there is a time to sleep under the care of God. As the story continues, the waters are gathered, the land appears, and the earth begins to carry life. Plants rise from the ground. Trees grow with fruit and seed. Beauty begins quietly. God does not rush creation. He makes each part in its own time. This matters for your life too. You may want everything to change quickly. You may want healing to come all at once. You may want answers tonight. But God often works like creation, step by step, light first, then space, then land, then life, then fruit. Do not despise the small beginning. Do not be ashamed if your healing is slow. The seed does not become a tree in one night. The heart does not become peaceful by force. Rest tonight knowing that God is patient with what He is growing in you. Then the lights appear in the sky. The greater light rules the day. The lesser light rules the night. The stars are placed like quiet witnesses above the world. And in this, there is comfort. Even the night was not left empty. God gave light to the darkness. He placed signs in the sky so that time itself would not feel lost. For the one who cannot sleep, this is a gentle reminder: the night is still under the care of God. Darkness is not stronger than Him. The long hours are not forgotten by Him. The silence around you is not proof that you are alone. As you rest, remember Jesus is with you in the night. He is not distant from your breathing. He is not absent from your room. He is near to the tired, near to the anxious, near to the one who has no words left. Then the waters become alive. Creatures move in the sea. Birds cross the sky. The earth begins to sound with life. And God blesses what He has made. This blessing is important. Before humanity could perform, before anyone could earn approval, before anyone could prove worth, God was already blessing life. The heart often forgets this. We think we must become perfect before we can be loved. We think we must fix everything before we can rest. We think we must carry every burden alone. But from the beginning, blessing came from God. Life was not born from human effort. It was received. This is why rest is holy. When you sleep, you confess without words that you are not God. You do not keep the world spinning. You do not hold the stars in place. You do not have to solve every problem before morning. You are allowed to close your eyes because God remains awake. Then humanity is created. This moment is tender. God forms mankind in His image. This means human life is not random. It is not cheap. It is not forgotten. You were not made to be a machine. You were not made only to work, worry, survive, and disappear. You were made with dignity. You were made to know God. You were made to reflect His goodness in the world. And even when life makes you feel small, heaven still remembers the image placed within you. The first human breath came from God. This is a beautiful truth for anyone listening tonight. Your breath is not just biology. It is a quiet gift. Every slow breath can become a reminder, God is sustaining me. Breathe in gently. Receive the mercy of this moment. Breathe out slowly. Let the burden leave your body. You are held by the same God who breathed life into the first human being. Then comes the garden. A place of beauty. A place of provision. A place where work was not punishment, and rest was not guilt. The garden shows us what the heart was made for. Closeness with God. Peace with creation. Honest relationship. Simple trust. Adam was placed there to care for it. This means work was once connected to love, not fear. Purpose was meant to be peaceful, not crushing. But even in a place of beauty, God gave a boundary. The command was not meant to steal joy. It was meant to protect life. This is something the modern heart often struggles to understand. We think freedom means having no limits. But in the garden, freedom existed with trust. God gave many trees, many gifts, much beauty. Only one tree carried a warning. This teaches us that love is not proven by taking everything. Love is proven by trust. The heart finds peace when it can say, God knows what is good for me. Then God sees that the man should not be alone. So companionship is given. Human beings were not created for cold isolation. We were made for relationship, for kindness, for shared life, for the comfort of being seen. Adam and Eve lived without shame. This is one of the most beautiful pictures in the beginning. No hiding. No pretending. No fear of being known. Before sin wounded the world, there was openness. There was innocence. There was peace. Many people tonight are tired because they have spent years hiding. Hiding pain. Hiding weakness. Hiding fear. Hiding the parts of themselves they think are too broken to be loved. But Jesus comes near to the hidden places. He does not come with cruelty. He comes with truth and mercy. He sees what shame tries to cover. And he offers a better covering than fear. Then the serpent enters the story. Temptation does not begin with shouting. It begins with a question. A small doubt. A soft twisting of the truth. Did God really say? This is still how many battles begin inside the heart. Did God really love you? Did God really forgive you? Did God really hear your prayer? Did God really stay near when you failed? Temptation often tries to make God look less good than he is. It tries to make his boundary look like rejection. It tries to make disobedience look like freedom. Eve looked at the fruit. It seemed pleasing. It seemed desirable. And the human heart reached for what God had warned against. Adam also ate. And with that choice, something broke. Their eyes were opened, but not into peace. They saw their shame. They tried to cover themselves. They hid among the trees. This is the old pattern of the human heart. When we fall, we cover. When we are afraid, we hide. When guilt speaks loudly, we run from the very one who can heal us. But listen gently tonight. God came walking in the garden. He called to the man. He did not ask because he lacked knowledge. He asked because he was inviting Adam out of hiding. Where are you? This question still reaches the soul. Not as accusation only, but as mercy. Where are you in your fear? Where are you in your pain? Where are you in your weariness? Where are you in the places where you no longer feel like yourself? God calls not because he wants to destroy the wounded heart, but because hiding cannot heal us. Adam blamed Eve. Eve blamed the serpent. And this too feels familiar. When shame enters, love becomes difficult. Responsibility becomes heavy. People begin to protect themselves by pushing pain onto someone else. But God sees everything clearly. Sin has consequences. The ground becomes difficult. Pain enters human life. Relationships become strained. Work becomes heavy. Death enters the story. This is not a small sadness. It is the great wound of humanity. Yet even here, mercy is not absent. God gives a promise. A future victory will come. The offspring of the woman will crush the serpent. This is the first whisper of hope. The first light of redemption. The first sign that evil will not have the final word. For the Christian heart, this hope points forward to Jesus. He is the one who enters our broken story. He is the one who carries what we could not carry. He is the one who comes close to the ashamed, the guilty, the afraid, and the lost. The story of the fall is not only about what humanity ruined. It is also about what God began to restore. Then God clothes Adam and Eve. This is tender. Before sending them out of the garden, He covers them. The covering made by their own hands was not enough. But God provides a covering. This reminds us that human effort cannot fully heal shame. We can try to look strong. We can try to appear fine. We can try to cover ourselves with success, noise, busyness, or distraction. But only God can cover the soul with mercy. Tonight, if shame has followed you into bed, let this truth rest over you. Jesus does not leave you naked in your fear. He does not turn away from your weakness. He offers grace that reaches deeper than your self-defense. Adam and Eve leave the garden. The way back is guarded. The world outside is different. Life will now include sweat, pain, longing, and loss. But even outside the garden, God is still present. This matters deeply. Many people think that failure means God is finished with them. But the story says otherwise. The garden was lost, but God did not abandon humanity. The consequences were real, but so was His continuing mercy. You may have walked through seasons that felt like exile. You may have made choices you regret. You may have lost peace, lost trust, lost direction. But your story is not over because you are outside the place you once hoped to be. God still meets people east of Eden. God still speaks in the wilderness. God still builds redemption in broken families. Then Adam and Eve have sons, Cain and Abel. One works the ground. One keeps flocks. Both bring offerings. But something is wrong in Cain. His heart becomes angry. His face falls. God warns him gently. Sin is near. It desires to master him. But he must rule over it. This warning is full of wisdom for every listener. Anger does not stay small when it is fed. Jealousy does not remain harmless when it is welcomed. Bitterness grows teeth when the heart refuses correction. God spoke before Cain acted. Mercy warned him before destruction happened. That means God often speaks to us before our emotions lead us into damage. A pause can save a life. A prayer can stop a harsh word. A humble moment can prevent years of regret. But Cain did not listen. He rose against Abel. The first family became the place of the first deep violence. Brother turned against brother. The ground received innocent blood. This is heartbreaking. Humanity had fallen not only away from God, but away from one another. And again God asks a question. Where is your brother? Cain answers with coldness. But God hears what humans try to silence. The blood cries from the ground. No hidden wrong is hidden from God. No secret cruelty escapes His sight. This may sound heavy, but it is also comfort. The pain no one else saw, God saw. The tears no one counted, God counted. The wounds no one defended, God did not ignore. Justice belongs to Him. And yet, even Cain receives a mark of protection. This is difficult to understand, but it shows a mysterious mercy. God judges sin, but He also restrains revenge. He does not let violence become endless. Even in judgment, He sets a boundary around destruction. Life continues. Generations rise. People build cities. People create music. People develop tools. Human culture begins to grow. But inside human progress, the wound of sin continues. This is still true today. The world can become advanced and still remain restless. People can build beautiful things and still carry broken hearts. Technology can increase, comfort can increase, knowledge can increase, but without God, the soul still becomes lost. Then another child is born, Seth. And from his line comes a renewed beginning. People begin to call on the name of the Lord. This is a quiet but powerful moment. After loss, after murder, after exile, after grief, worship begins again. This is one of the great hopes of the early story. Pain does not have to be the last sound in the family line. Someone can begin to call on God again. Someone can return to prayer. Someone can bring the name of the Lord back into the house. Maybe you are that person. Maybe in your family, there has been fear. Maybe there has been anger. Maybe there has been silence. Maybe there has been distance from God. But tonight, one quiet prayer can become a new beginning. You do not need a perfect past to call on the Lord. You only need an honest heart. the generations continue. Names rise and pass away. Lives are long, yet every life ends. Again and again the story reminds us that human life is precious, but fragile. And then we meet Enoch. Enoch walked with God. What a peaceful phrase. He walked with God. Not rushed with God. Not performed for God. Not pretended before God. He walked with God. This is the kind of faith that heals the heart. A daily nearness. A steady trust. A life that keeps turning toward the presence of God. Tonight, you do not have to understand everything. You do not have to become perfect before morning. You can simply walk with God in the next breath. You can turn your heart toward Jesus. You can say, "Stay near me tonight." And that simple turning matters. Then Noah is born. His name carries hope for comfort in a world of painful toil. By this time, human wickedness has spread. Violence fills the earth. The thoughts of the human heart have become deeply bent toward evil. This is one of the saddest pictures in Scripture. But in the middle of corruption, Noah finds favor in the eyes of the Lord. This does not mean Noah lived in an easy world. It means he walked differently in a dark world. He was not perfect in his own strength. But he listened. He obeyed. He trusted God when others did not. And this prepares us for the next great movement of the story. Judgment will come, but so will preservation. Waters will rise, but God will provide a way. The ark will become a sign that obedience can carry a family through storms they could never survive alone. For tonight, let the first part rest here. From creation to the fall, from shame to mercy, from Cain to Seth, from human violence to Noah finding grace, the message is clear. God created the world good. Human sin broke what was beautiful. But God did not walk away. He kept calling. He kept covering. He kept warning. He kept preserving hope. And in Jesus, that hope becomes even clearer. You are not alone tonight. God is near. The same God who brought light out of darkness can bring peace into your heart. The same God who called Adam out of hiding can gently call you out of fear. The same God who saw Abel, warned Cain, and walked with Enoch, sees you now. Rest in His mercy. Let your body become still. Let your thoughts become quiet. Let the story remind you that even after the first human failure, God was already moving toward redemption. Prayer. Lord Jesus, bring peace into this heart tonight. Cover every place of shame with mercy. Quiet every fear with your presence, and help this soul rest safely in the love of God. Tonight, let your heart slow down again. As you rest, remember Jesus is near, even when the world feels heavy. the story now moves into a darker season of humanity. The earth that God created with beauty had become filled with violence. The hearts of people had turned far from peace. What was meant to reflect goodness had become restless, selfish, and wounded. And yet, in the middle of a world losing its way, one man still walked with God. His name was Noah. Noah did not live in an easy time. He did not live surrounded by perfect people. He did not live in a peaceful world where faith was simple. He lived in a time when obedience probably looked strange. He lived in a time when listening to God may have made him seem different from everyone around him. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. This is a comforting truth for every tired soul tonight. You do not need the whole world around you to be peaceful before you can walk with God. You do not need everyone to understand your faith before you can obey. You do not need your surroundings to be perfect before your heart can turn toward Jesus. Sometimes faith grows in the middle of noise. Sometimes trust becomes strong in a season where nothing makes sense. Sometimes God calls one person to build in faith, while others only see wood, rain, and impossibility. God told Noah to build an ark. This was not a small instruction. It was not a quick task. It was a long obedience. It required time. It required strength. It required patience. It required trust when the reason was not yet visible to every eye. Noah had to work before the rain came. He had to prepare before the storm appeared. He had to believe the warning of God before the sky changed. This speaks deeply to the heart. Many people want faith only after they see proof. But true trust often begins before the evidence arrives. Prayer begins before the answer. Healing begins before the feeling changes. Obedience begins before comfort appears. Noah built because God spoke. And sometimes that is enough. Maybe tonight, God has been inviting you to build something quiet in your life. A habit of prayer. A softer heart. A cleaner mind. A peaceful home. A life that is not ruled by fear. A faith that stays steady when others do not understand. It may feel slow. It may feel hidden. But the ark was built one piece at a time. And your inner life is often rebuilt the same way. One honest prayer. One surrendered worry. One forgiven wound. One peaceful choice. One night of choosing to rest instead of fighting every thought. The flood did not come without warning. God gave Noah time. God made a way of preservation. The ark was not only a structure. It was mercy in the shape of obedience. It was protection prepared before the storm. This is how grace often works. God sees what is coming before we do. He prepares shelter before we understand the need. He guides us before we understand the road. And in Jesus, we see the deepest shelter of all. Not a wooden ark only, but a Savior who carries the soul through judgment, fear, and death, into life. When the time came, Noah entered the ark with his family. The animals came. The door was shut. Then the rain began. 40 days and 40 nights. Water from above. Water from below. The world that had seemed so stable was covered. Mountains disappeared beneath the rising flood. Everything human pride had trusted in became powerless before the waters. This part of the story is serious. It reminds us that sin is not small. Violence is not small. A heart that keeps rejecting God does not remain harmless. But even in a serious story, there is mercy for the one who listens. Noah was not saved because the stone was weak. He was saved because God provided a way. The ark rose above the waters. What destroyed one world carried Noah into another beginning. This is a powerful picture for the weary listener. Sometimes the very waters you fear become the waters God uses to lift you. Sometimes the storm you did not choose becomes the place where you learn to trust more deeply. Sometimes what feels like an ending is also the hidden beginning of a new chapter. Inside the ark, Noah could not control the flood. He could not steer the world. He could not stop the rain. He could only remain where God had placed him. That is a lesson for tonight. You cannot control everything. You cannot control every person. You cannot control every delay. You cannot control every unknown part of tomorrow. But you can remain in the shelter of God. You can rest under the care of Jesus. You can let your soul say, I am not in control, but I am not abandoned. For many days, the waters covered the earth. The ark floated. Noah waited. Waiting is one of the hardest parts of faith. It is easier to start building than to keep waiting. It is easier to enter the ark than to stay inside while nothing seems to change. But God had not forgotten Noah. That sentence is one of the most tender truths in the story. God remembered Noah. This does not mean God had ever lost him from his mind. It means God turned his covenant attention toward him. God remained faithful. God saw the ark. God saw the family inside. God saw every living creature preserved there. And God sent a wind over the earth. The waters began to recede. Tonight, hold this close. God remembers you. Not because you are loud. Not because you are perfect. Not because you can explain your pain beautifully. God remembers you because He is faithful. He sees you in the waiting. He sees you in the quiet place. He sees you when the rain has stopped but the ground is not yet dry. This is where many hearts grow tired. The worst may be over, but life is not yet restored. The rain may have ended, but you still cannot step out. The pain may be less, but the future is still uncertain. Noah had to wait for the waters to go down. He had to wait for the mountain tops to appear. He had to wait while the earth slowly became ready again. Healing is often like that. First the storm stops. Then the water lowers. Then the mountain appears. Then the dove returns. Then the leaf is seen. Then the door opens. Do not rush what God is drying, restoring, and preparing. Noah sent out a raven. Then he sent out a dove. The dove returned because there was no place to rest. Later, the dove returned with a fresh olive leaf. That small leaf carried a message of hope. The earth was coming back. Life was beginning again. The flood was not the final word. Sometimes God gives hope in small signs. Not the full answer yet. Not the whole land restored yet. Not every question solved yet. Just one olive leaf. One gentle breath of peace. One small open door. One kind word. One night of better sleep. One prayer that feels honest again. One quiet moment where your heart says, maybe God is still working. Do not ignore the small olive leaves in your life. They may be signs that grace is returning to places you thought were gone. After more waiting, the dove did not return. The earth was becoming ready. Then God told Noah to come out of the ark. Notice this carefully. Noah did not leave only because he wanted to. He waited for the word of God. The same God who told him when to enter told him when to come out. Faith is not only knowing when to move into shelter. Faith is also knowing when to step into a new beginning. Some people leave too early because waiting is painful. Some people stay too long because fear feels safer than the open ground. But God knows when the earth is ready beneath your feet. Trust His timing. When Noah came out, the world was washed, quiet, and new. The first thing he did was build an altar. This is beautiful. Before building a house, he built worship. Before making plans, he honored God. Before claiming the new earth for himself, he remembered the one who had carried him through the flood. This teaches us how to begin again. When God brings you through a hard season, do not rush past gratitude. Pause. Build an altar in your heart. Say thank you. Remember how He kept you. Remember how He gave strength. Remember how He held you when the waters were high. The altar was not only a religious act. It was a heart returning to the center. Noah knew survival was not because of his own greatness. It was because of God. And when the offering rose, the Lord responded with a promise. Never again would the earth be destroyed by flood in that way. As long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will continue. This promise brings rhythm back after chaos. After the flood, God speaks stability. The world had been shaken, but it would not remain shapeless. Seasons would continue. Morning would return. Harvest would come. This is comfort for the anxious mind. Your life may pass through seasons of flood, but God is still the God of seasons. There will be cold, and there will be heat. There will be night, and there will be morning. There will be planting, and there will be harvest. Not every season feels fruitful, but every season remains under God. Then God blesses Noah and his sons. The blessing given in the beginning is spoken again after the flood. Be fruitful. Increase. Fill the earth. This shows that God still desires life. Judgment did not erase his purpose. Human failure did not cancel his plan. The world was wounded, but God still spoke blessing over the future. This matters for your heart. Your past does not have the power to cancel every future blessing. Your failures do not surprise God into silence. Your broken seasons do not make restoration impossible. In Jesus, mercy speaks again over lives that thought they were finished. God establishes a covenant with Noah, his descendants, and every living creature. The sign of that covenant is the rainbow, a bow set in the clouds, a sign that mercy will be remembered. A reminder placed not in a temple, not in a palace, but in the sky where all creation can see. The rainbow appears with clouds. That is important. The sign of promise does not appear in a world with no storms. It appears in the place where sunlight meets rain. This is one of the most gentle truths in the story. God does not wait for all clouds to disappear before showing his promise. He places mercy in the middle of them. Maybe tonight there are still clouds in your life. Questions, regrets, financial worries, family pain, weariness in your body, fear about tomorrow. But the presence of clouds does not mean the absence of God. Sometimes the promise shines there. Not after everything is perfect, but while the heart is still learning to trust. The rainbow says that God remembers. The rainbow says destruction will not have the last word. The rainbow says covenant is stronger than chaos. For the Christian heart, every promise of God finds deeper meaning in Jesus. He is the faithful one. He is the mercy after judgment. He is the peace after the storm. He is the light that shines through the clouds of human pain. Then the story becomes very human again. Noah plants a vineyard. He becomes drunk. His family faces shame and dishonor. This part may feel disappointing after such a great rescue. But Scripture is honest. Even after deliverance, people still need grace. Noah survived the flood, but he was still human. His family was saved, but still imperfect. A new world did not automatically create a perfect heart. This teaches us not to place our hope in circumstances alone. If only the storm ends, we think we will be perfect. If only life becomes easier, we think we will never struggle. But the human heart needs more than a new environment. It needs ongoing mercy. It needs wisdom. It needs the steady presence of God. The story of Noah reminds us that rescue is real, but growth must continue. God can bring you out of a flood, and still keep healing what the flood revealed. After Noah, the nations begin to spread. Families grow. Names multiply. People fill different lands. Humanity begins again across the earth. But then another pattern of pride appears. The people gather in one place. They decide to build a city and a tower reaching toward the heavens. They want to make a name for themselves. They fear being scattered. This is the story of Babel. At first, it may look like unity. People working together. People building together. People speaking one language. But the deeper problem is pride. They are not building for the glory of God. They are building for their own name. They want height without humility. Security without surrender. Greatness without obedience. This still speaks today. The human heart often wants to build towers. A tower of success. A tower of control. A tower of reputation. A tower of being seen. A tower that says, I will make myself safe. I will make myself important. I will reach heaven by my own strength. But the soul cannot find rest in towers of pride. A name built without God becomes a burden to maintain. A life built only for image becomes exhausting. A heart that must always prove itself cannot sleep in peace. God comes down and confuses their language. The people are scattered. The tower remains unfinished. This is judgment, but it is also mercy. If pride continues unchecked, it destroys the soul. If human ambition has no boundary, it becomes dangerous. God interrupts what would have led humanity deeper into self-worship. Sometimes the interruptions in life feel painful. A plan fails. A door closes. A tower falls apart. But not every interruption is rejection. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes God scatters what would have trapped us. Sometimes He stops what would have made us proud, empty, or far from Him. The story then narrows toward one family. From the scattered nations, we move toward the line that will lead to Abram. This is how God often works. When everything looks wide and chaotic, He begins with one quiet call. One person. One family. One promise. One step of faith. The world after Babel is divided and confused, but God is preparing a blessing for all nations. This is beautiful. Human pride tried to reach heaven by a tower. God will bring blessing through a promise. Human beings tried to make a name for themselves. God will give a name and a calling to Abram. Humanity was scattered in confusion. God will begin a story that leads toward redemption for the world. This is the movement of grace. God does not abandon the nations after Babel. He begins a plan to bless them. And that plan will one day point to Jesus, the one through whom every tribe, every language, and every people can be invited near again. So part 2 ends with this deep comfort. The flood shows that God takes evil seriously. The ark shows that God provides mercy. The dove shows that hope can return slowly. The altar shows that new beginnings should start with worship. The rainbow shows that God remembers His promise. Babel shows that pride cannot bring peace. And the line toward Abram shows that God is already preparing blessing beyond what people can see. Tonight, let this story settle gently over you. If you feel like you are inside the ark, waiting for waters to go down, God remembers you. If you feel like you are looking for one small olive leaf of hope, God can send it. If you feel like your world has been washed empty, God can begin again. If you feel like your own plans have become a tower too heavy to carry, you can lay them down. You do not need to build your way to heaven. Jesus has come near. You do not need to make your own name great. You are already known by God. You do not need to fear the night. The Lord of the rainbow, the Lord of the ark, the Lord of every season, is still faithful. Rest now. Let your thoughts become quiet. Let the waters inside your heart become still. Let Jesus be your shelter. Let His peace become the ark around your soul. Prayer. Lord Jesus, shelter this heart tonight, calm every rising water within, help this soul trust your timing, and let the promise of God bring peace, hope, and safe rest until morning. Tonight, let your heart become quiet again. As you rest, remember that Jesus is near, even when the promise feels far away. After the flood, after the rainbow, after the Tower of Babel, the story becomes quieter. God begins to work through one man. His name was Abram. He lived among his people, in the place he knew. surrounded by the familiar rhythms of home. Then God called him to leave. This call was not simple. Abram was asked to leave his country, his people, and his father's household, and go to a land God would show him. He was not given every detail. He was not handed a full map. He was not told every step before he began. He received a promise, and he obeyed. This is where faith often begins. Not with complete understanding. Not with perfect confidence. Not with every question answered. Faith begins when the heart hears God calling and says yes to the next step. Maybe tonight, you are also standing between what is familiar and what God is preparing. You may not know the whole road. You may not know how long the journey will take. You may not know what will happen after you obey. But Jesus meets the heart that is afraid to move forward. He does not shame you for needing courage. He gives peace for one step at a time. God promised Abram blessing. He promised to make him into a great nation. He promised that through him, all peoples of the earth would be blessed. This promise was larger than Abram's life. It reached beyond his age, beyond his family, beyond his understanding. And this is how God often works. He plants promises that are bigger than the person receiving them. He sees generations when we only see today. He sees fruit when we only see a seed. He sees a future when we only see uncertainty. Abram went as the Lord had told him. This simple sentence carries great strength. He went. He did not understand everything. But he went. He carried his household, his possessions, his wife Sarai, and his nephew Lot. He entered the land of Canaan. And there, God appeared to him again. To your offspring I will give this land. Abram built an altar. Then he moved again. Then he built another altar. This pattern is beautiful. Wherever Abram went, he remembered God. The land was not yet fully his. The promise was not yet fully seen. But worship came before possession. Faith built altars before it built houses. This teaches the resting heart something important. Do not wait until every promise is complete before you worship. Do not wait until every prayer is answered before you thank God. Do not wait until life feels secure before you call on the name of the Lord. Build an altar in the waiting. Build an altar in the unknown. Build an altar in the place where you still have questions. Because worship reminds the soul that God is greater than the delay. Then famine came. This is surprising. Abram obeyed God, and still famine came. Faith did not mean there would be no difficulty. Obedience did not mean the road would always be easy. Abram went down to Egypt because the famine was severe. There, fear entered his heart. He worried that because Sarai was beautiful, the Egyptians might harm him. So he asked her to say she was his sister. Fear made him choose protection through half-truth. This part of the story is honest. Abram was chosen by God, yet still afraid. He was called by God, yet still imperfect. He had faith, but he also had weakness. This should comfort us. God does not build his promises on perfect people. He works with people who tremble, stumble, learn, and return. Jesus is not surprised by your weakness tonight. He knows the places where fear has shaped your choices. He knows the moments when you tried to protect yourself in your own way. He does not invite you to pretend. He invites you back into trust. God protected Sarai. Abram left Egypt with his wife and all he had. The promise was still alive, not because Abram handled everything perfectly, but because God remained faithful. After this, Abram returned to the place where he had first built an altar. This is powerful. When life becomes complicated, sometimes the soul needs to return to the place of prayer. Return to the first love. Return to the quiet altar. Return to the simple trust that began the journey. Lot was with Abram, and both had many flocks and herds. Their possessions grew so much that the land could not support them together. Quarreling began between their herders. Abram could have demanded first choice. He was older. He carried the promise. He had the right to choose. But he chose peace. He told Lot that they should not quarrel, because they were close relatives. He allowed Lot to choose the land first. Lot looked toward the plain of the Jordan. It was well watered and beautiful. So Lot chose for himself what looked pleasant to the eye. Abram remained in Canaan. This moment teaches a quiet lesson. Not every beautiful direction is the safest direction. Lot chose by sight. Abram lived by promise. The eyes can see green fields, but they cannot always see hidden danger. The heart can desire comfort, but not every comfort leads to peace. Abram surrendered the first choice, and God spoke to him after Lot departed. Look around. North, south, east, and west. All the land you see will be given to you and your offspring. This is often how God comforts the surrendered heart. When you let go of what you could have fought for, God reminds you that His promise is not small. Abram did not lose by choosing peace. He gained a deeper word from God. Then Abram moved near the great trees of Mamre, and again he built an altar. Faith keeps building altars. Faith keeps remembering. Faith keeps choosing God over control. Later, Lot was taken captive during a conflict between kings. Abram heard that his relative had been captured. He gathered trained men from his household and went to rescue him. The man who had allowed Lot to choose first now risked himself to save Lot. This is another sign of a heart shaped by faith. Abram did not say, "Lot made his own choice, let him suffer." He acted with courage. He rescued his relative. He recovered what had been taken. After the victory, Melchizedek, king of Salem and priest of God Most High, came with bread and wine. He blessed Abram. Abram gave him a tenth of everything. Then the king of Sodom offered Abram goods. But Abram refused to let that king make him rich. Abram knew his blessing came from God. This matters for anyone trying to live with peace. Not every offer is worth receiving. Not every gain is clean. Not every opportunity belongs in your hands. A peaceful life is not built only by accepting more. Sometimes peace comes from knowing what to refuse. Abram would rather trust God than let a corrupt king claim credit for his future. Then God came to Abram in a vision. "Do not be afraid. I am your shield, your very great reward." This word came after victory. Even strong people need reassurance after battle. Even faithful people need to hear God say, "Do not be afraid." Abram's deepest ache was still there. He had no child. The promise of offspring had not yet become visible. He had land promised to him, but no son to inherit it. He asked God honestly, "What can you give me, since I remain childless?" This is not unbelief speaking with rebellion. It is faith speaking with pain. God does not despise honest questions. He invites Abram outside. Look up at the sky. Count the stars, if you can count them. So shall your offspring be. Abram looked into the night sky and received a promise too large to measure. And Abram believed the Lord. That belief was counted to him as righteousness. Tonight, imagine that quiet moment. An old man under a wide sky. A promise beyond possibility. Stars shining above him like silent witnesses. Nothing in his body proved the promise yet. Nothing in his circumstances made it easy. But he believed God. This is faith. Faith is not pretending the delay is easy. Faith is trusting God's character when the promise has not yet arrived. Maybe you are under your own night sky tonight, looking at things you cannot control, wondering how God will do what He has spoken, wondering if your prayers have been forgotten. Let the stars remind you. God's promises are not limited by what you can count. God made a covenant with Abram. The vision was deep and holy. There was darkness. There was a smoking fire and a blazing torch. God spoke of generations, suffering, deliverance, and return. Abram learned that the promise would unfold through time. Not everything would happen quickly. His descendants would pass through hardship before fulfillment. This is hard, but true. God's promises can include seasons we would not choose. Yet the presence of suffering does not cancel the covenant. The delay does not cancel the promise. The darkness does not cancel the fire. In Jesus, we see this truth more clearly. The cross looked like darkness, but God was working redemption. The tomb looked like silence, but resurrection was coming. So when your life enters a season that feels hidden, do not assume God has stopped. He may be working in ways too deep for the moment to explain. Then comes the story of Sarai and Hagar. Sarai had borne no child. The waiting became painful. The promise seemed delayed. So Sarai tried to solve the promise by her own plan. She gave her servant Hagar to Abram. Hagar conceived. Then tension filled the house. Pride, pain, jealousy, and mistreatment entered the family. This story is very human. Waiting can make people desperate. Delay can tempt the heart to force what only God can give. When we are tired of waiting, we may create solutions that bring deeper sorrow. But even in this painful situation, God saw Hagar. She fled into the wilderness. She was alone, wounded, and afraid. And the angel of the Lord found her near a spring. This is one of the most tender moments in the story. God found the woman who had been pushed into pain. He spoke to her by name. He heard her misery. She called him the God who sees me. Tonight, this truth is for anyone who feels unseen. God sees the person others use. God sees the person others blame. God sees the one sitting alone in the wilderness. God sees the tears that never became words. Jesus is near to the unseen. He is gentle with the bruised heart. He does not overlook the one standing outside the main story. Hagar bore Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old. Still the promise through Sarai had not come. Years passed. Then when Abram was 99, God appeared again. He called Abram to walk before him faithfully and be blameless. He confirmed the covenant. And God changed his name. Abram became Abraham. Sarai became Sarah. A new name marked a deeper promise. Abraham would be the father of many nations. Sarah would be the mother of nations. Kings would come from her. Abraham laughed. The promise seemed impossible. A son in his age. A child from Sarah's body. It sounded beyond nature. But God was not limited by age. God was not limited by the closed door. God was not limited by what human bodies said was possible. The child would be named Isaac. The name carried laughter. What once sounded impossible would become joy. This is beautiful. God can turn the laugh of disbelief into the laughter of fulfillment. He can take the place where the heart said, "How could this ever happen?" and make it a place of worship. God also heard Abraham's concern for Ishmael. Ishmael would be blessed too. But the covenant promise would come through Isaac. This teaches that God can care for more than one wound at once. He did not forget Ishmael while confirming Isaac. He did not abandon Hagar's son. His mercy is wider than human rivalry. Then the Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre. Abraham welcomed 3 visitors with hospitality. He hurried to serve. Sarah prepared bread. A meal was offered in the heat of the day. Then the promise was spoken again. By this time next year, Sarah would have a son. Sarah listened from the tent and laughed within herself. She knew her age. She knew her body. She knew how long the waiting had been. Then came the question, is anything too hard for the Lord? This question still stands over every impossible place. Is your past too hard for the Lord? Is your fear too hard for the Lord? Is your family pain too hard for the Lord? Is your delay too hard for the Lord? Is your tired heart too hard for Jesus to comfort? No. Nothing is too hard for the Lord. This does not mean every desire arrives exactly when we demand it. It means God is not trapped by what traps us. He is not limited by what limits us. His timing may humble us. His ways may stretch us. But His power remains holy and kind. Then Abraham interceded for Sodom. He stood before the Lord and pleaded for mercy. He asked whether the city would be spared for 50 righteous people, then 45, then 40, then 30, then 20, then 10. This moment shows Abraham not only as a receiver of promise, but as a person learning the heart of mercy. He cared about justice. He cared about the righteous. He dared to speak with humility. True faith does not make the heart cold. It makes the heart intercede. It makes us care about others. It teaches us to pray for mercy in places of judgment. Then Sodom was judged. Lot was rescued, but barely. He hesitated. The angels took him and his family by the hand because the Lord was merciful. That detail is precious. Even when Lot hesitated, mercy pulled him out. Some nights, we are not strong enough to run quickly. Some seasons, we know we should leave what harms us, but we hesitate. Jesus is merciful to the hesitant heart. He can take us by the hand and lead us away from destruction. But Lot's wife looked back. Her heart remained attached to what God was removing her from. This is a warning. Do not keep your soul tied to the place God is rescuing you from. Do not keep longing for what wounded you. Do not keep turning back to the old fire. Freedom requires a forward heart. After this, Abraham again faced fear and Gerar. He said Sarah was his sister. The old fear appeared again. This reminds us that growth can be slow. Sometimes the same weakness returns in a new place. But again, God protected Sarah. Again, God preserved the promise. The child of promise could not be stopped by Abraham's fear. This is grace. God's faithfulness is stronger than repeated human weakness. Then the promised son was born. Isaac came at the appointed time. Sarah said God had brought her laughter. The long waiting became joy. The impossible became a child in her arms. Abraham was 100 years old. The promise had taken years. But God was not late. He came at the appointed time. Tonight, let that phrase comfort you. At the appointed time. Not always at the hurried time. Not always at the anxious time. Not always at the time others expect. But at the appointed time. God knows the hour of birth for what He has promised. The child grew. But trouble remained in the family. Sarah saw Ishmael mocking. She wanted Hagar and Ishmael sent away. Abraham was distressed. The situation was painful. God told him that Isaac carried the covenant line, but Ishmael would also become a nation. Hagar went into the wilderness again with her son. The water ran out. She could not bear to watch the boy suffer. She sat at a distance and wept. Then God heard the boy crying. He spoke to Hagar. Do not be afraid. He opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. This is another gentle truth. Sometimes the provision is near, but grief blinds us to it. God did not create water after she cried. The well was there. But He opened her eyes. Tonight, maybe what you need is not only a new miracle, but open eyes. Eyes to see the grace already near. Eyes to see the help God has placed beside you. Eyes to see that you are not abandoned in the wilderness. God was with the boy as he grew. The story did not end in the desert. Then comes one of the deepest tests in Abraham's life. God tested him and called him to offer Isaac. This story is heavy and holy. Isaac was the son of promise. The son Abraham loved. The son born after long waiting. The son connected to the covenant. Abraham rose early and obeyed. He traveled with Isaac. He carried fire and knife. Isaac carried the wood. Then Isaac asked where the lamb was. Abraham answered that God Himself would provide the lamb. This answer carries faith through trembling. Abraham did not know exactly how God would provide, but he trusted the God who had given the promise. At the mountain, Abraham prepared the altar. Then the voice from heaven stopped him. "Do not lay a hand on the boy." Abraham looked and saw a ram caught in a thicket. God provided. Isaac lived. The ram was offered instead. Abraham named the place, "The Lord will provide." For the Christian heart, this story points forward with deep tenderness. God did not ultimately require Abraham's son. But one day, God would give his own son. Jesus would become the lamb provided for the world. The cross would show that God's provision is deeper than we can understand. The love of God is not distant. It gives. It sacrifices. It saves. So tonight, when you hear that the Lord will provide, do not think only of money, food, or answers. Think of Jesus. The deepest provision is mercy. The deepest provision is forgiveness. The deepest provision is the presence of Christ with the soul. After this, Sarah's life came to an end. Abraham mourned her. The woman who waited, laughed, struggled, and finally held the promise, now rested from her years. Abraham bought a burial place with dignity. Even grief was handled with care. Faith does not remove mourning. It gives mourning a place before God. If you have lost someone, or lost a season, or lost a dream, Jesus is near to that grief. He does not rush the tears. He stands with the brokenhearted. Later, Abraham sent his servant to find a wife for Isaac. The servant prayed for guidance. Before he had finished praying, Rebekah came. She offered water not only to him, but also to his camels. Her kindness became a sign. The servant worshipped God. This story is peaceful after many storms. It reminds us that God guides ordinary steps. A journey. A prayer. A well. A young woman with a jar. A simple act of kindness. God often hides his guidance in ordinary moments. Not every miracle arrives with thunder. Sometimes it arrives through a generous heart at a well. Rebekah agreed to go. Isaac saw her coming. He loved her. And Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. This is a soft ending to a long season. After grief, comfort came. After waiting, promise continued. After one generation, another began. Abraham's life eventually came to its close. He died old and full of years. He had not seen every promise completed, but he had seen enough to trust the God who would continue the story. That is faith. To live faithfully in your chapter, even when the full book belongs to God. Tonight, Part 3 rests here. Abraham teaches us to follow when the road is unclear. Sarah teaches us that waiting can become laughter. Hagar teaches us that God sees the forgotten. Isaac teaches us that promise can be born after impossibility. The mountain teaches us that the Lord provides. And Jesus shows us the fullness of that provision. Rest now. You do not need to force the promise. You do not need to build your own tower. You do not need to see the whole road. The God of Abraham is faithful. The God who sees Hagar sees you. The God who provided on the mountain has provided Jesus. Let your breathing slow. Let your hands release tomorrow. Let your heart trust the one who keeps his covenant. Prayer. Lord Jesus, help this heart trust you in the waiting. Open these eyes to see your provision. Calm every fear about tomorrow, and let this soul rest tonight in the faithful promises of God. Tonight, let your heart rest again. As you rest, remember Jesus is near, even in the places where family stories feel complicated. The story now moves from Abraham to Isaac. Abraham had walked through promise, waiting, fear, laughter, testing, grief, and blessing. Now the promise continues through his son. This reminds us that God does not only work in one moment. He works through generations. He carries mercy from one life into another life. He continues the story even when one chapter closes. Isaac was the child of promise. He was born after long waiting. He was the son who reminded Abraham and Sarah that nothing is too hard for the Lord. But Isaac also had to learn faith for himself. A child can receive a promise from the past, but still must walk with God in the present. This is true for every heart. You may have received prayers from someone before you. You may have inherited stories of faith. You may have heard about God from family, church, or childhood. But there comes a time when your own heart must learn to trust Jesus personally. Not only the God of someone else. Not only the faith of another generation. But the God who sees you tonight. Isaac married Rebekah. Their beginning carried comfort. Isaac had grieved the death of his mother, and Rebekah became a gift of peace in his life. But even in this blessed home, waiting returned. Rebekah could not have children for a time. So Isaac prayed. This is a gentle picture. He did not force the promise. He did not run ahead. He prayed for his wife. And God heard him. Rebekah conceived. Even so, the pregnancy was not peaceful. There was struggle within her. 2 children moved inside her, and the conflict felt so strong that she asked why this was happening. The Lord revealed that 2 nations were in her womb. 2 peoples would be separated. The older would serve the younger. Before Jacob and Esau were born, the story already carried tension. This teaches us something deep about human life. Some struggles begin before we understand them. Some family pain has roots older than our awareness. Some divisions are present before anyone can explain them. But God is not confused by the struggle. He sees what is hidden. He knows what is forming. He understands the future before the child takes the first breath. When the twins were born, Esau came first, red and hairy. Jacob came after, holding his brother's heel. Even their birth seemed to speak of struggle. Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country. Jacob was quieter, staying among the tents. Isaac loved Esau because he enjoyed the food Esau brought. Rebekah loved Jacob. This is where pain begins to grow. Favoritism enters the family. Love becomes divided. The parents do not carry their children with equal tenderness. And when love is uneven, the home becomes a place of quiet wounds. Many people listening tonight understand this kind of pain. Maybe you have felt less chosen. Maybe you have watched someone else receive approval more easily. Maybe you have carried the ache of comparison. Maybe family love felt like something you had to earn. Jesus is near to that wound. He sees the child who felt unseen. He sees the adult who still carries old rejection. He sees the heart that has tried for years to be enough. In the story, Esau came home hungry one day. Jacob was cooking stew. Esau wanted food immediately. Jacob asked for the birthright in exchange. Esau treated the birthright lightly. He chose the hunger of the moment over the weight of the future. This is a warning for every soul. Do not trade lasting blessing for temporary relief. Do not sell peace for one quick desire. Do not give away what is sacred because the body feels tired. When we are hungry, lonely, angry, or afraid, we are more likely to make poor choices. The enemy often tempts the heart in moments of weakness. But Jesus teaches us to pause, to breathe, to remember what matters, to not let one moment of appetite steal a future of blessing. Jacob also reveals something about the human heart. He wanted blessing, but he tried to grasp it through control. He believed in the value of the birthright, but his methods were not pure. This is often how people behave when they do not fully trust God. They want good things. They want purpose. They want blessing. But fear makes them manipulate. Fear makes them rush. Fear makes them use people instead of waiting on God. The story does not hide this. God works through Jacob, but Jacob still needs deep transformation. Then famine came again. Isaac faced a season that sounded like Abraham's story. The land was difficult. Resources were uncertain. God appeared to Isaac and told him not to go down to Egypt. He told him to stay in the land. He renewed the promise made to Abraham. Isaac was to live as a foreigner in the land, and God would be with him. This is comforting. God does not only speak to Abraham. He speaks to Isaac. He repeats the promise to the next generation. The blessing is not exhausted. The presence of God is not limited to the past. What God begins, He knows how to continue. Isaac stayed. But like Abraham, Isaac also acted in fear. He said Rebekah was his sister because he feared the men of the place would harm him. This repeated weakness shows something important. Family patterns often repeat. Fear can pass down. Avoidance can pass down. Half-truth can pass down. But grace can meet the same pattern in a new generation. God protected Rebekah. The truth came out. Isaac was corrected. Yet God still blessed him. Isaac planted crops and received a great harvest. He became wealthy. His flocks and herds increased. But blessing brought envy from others. The Philistines stopped up the wells that Abraham's servants had dug. Isaac moved. He reopened old wells. He dug again. There was quarreling over one well. Then another. Finally, he dug a well and there was no dispute. He named the place in a way that remembered room, space, and the Lord's provision. This is a beautiful picture for the tired heart. Sometimes you must keep digging. You may face resistance. You may lose places you thought were secure. You may have to move from conflict. But do not stop seeking the water God has for you. Do not let every argument consume your peace. Isaac did not fight over every well until his soul was destroyed. He moved. He dug again. He trusted that God could make room. Sometimes peace comes not from winning every dispute, but from knowing when to step aside and keep walking with God. That night, God appeared to Isaac. Do not be afraid. I am with you. I will bless you. Again, the words come with tenderness. Do not be afraid. So many times in Scripture, God speaks to fear. Because He knows human hearts tremble. Isaac built an altar there. He called on the name of the Lord. He pitched his tent. His servants dug a well. Altar, tent, well. Worship, dwelling, provision. This is a peaceful pattern for life. Keep worship at the center. Hold your earthly home lightly. Keep drawing from the water God provides. Later, Isaac grew old. His eyes became weak. He thought the time had come to bless Esau. He asked Esau to hunt and prepare food. Rebekah overheard. She wanted Jacob to receive the blessing. So she created a plan. Jacob would pretend to be Esau. He would bring food to Isaac. He would wear Esau's clothes. His arms would be covered to feel like his brother. Jacob feared being cursed if Isaac discovered the deception. But Rebekah pushed the plan forward. This scene is painful. Everyone is reaching for something. Isaac wants to bless the son he favors. Rebekah wants to secure the words spoken about Jacob. Jacob wants the blessing, but enters through deception. Esau is absent, unaware of what is happening. The home becomes a place of hidden plans. And still, God's larger purpose moves forward. This does not mean deception is good. It means human failure cannot overthrow God's plan. Jacob went into his father. Isaac questioned him. The voice sounded like Jacob. The hands felt like Esau. Isaac was unsure. But he blessed Jacob. The blessing spoke of abundance, authority, and promise. Then Esau returned. The truth was revealed. Isaac trembled. Esau cried out with a bitter cry. This moment is full of grief. Esau had despised his birthright earlier, but now he wanted the blessing. His sorrow was real. His anger rose. He planned to kill Jacob after Isaac's death. Rebekah heard and sent Jacob away to her brother Laban. What began as a plan to secure blessing became a separation of the family. Rebekah would lose Jacob's presence for many years. Jacob would leave home with blessing, but also with fear. This is an important lesson. When we try to force God's promise through human deception, pain spreads. God can redeem the story, but the wounds are still real. Grace does not mean choices have no consequences. Mercy does not mean manipulation is harmless. Jesus invites us into a better way. A way of trust. A way of truth. A way where the heart does not need to steal what God has promised to give in His time. Jacob left. On the way, he came to a certain place and stayed for the night. He used a stone for a pillow. He slept under the open sky. There, God met him in a dream. He saw a stairway reaching from earth to heaven. Angels were ascending and descending. The Lord stood above it and repeated the promise of Abraham and Isaac. The land would be given. His offspring would be many. All peoples would be blessed through his line. And then came the tender word. I am with you. I will watch over you wherever you go. I will bring you back. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised. This is one of the most comforting moments in Jacob's life. Jacob was leaving home because of deception and fear. He was not in a temple. He was not surrounded by family. He was not proud and secure. He was alone, sleeping on stone. And God met him there. This is grace. God meets people on the road. God meets people in lonely places. God meets people who have made mistakes. God does not wait for Jacob to become fully transformed before speaking promise. He begins the transformation with presence. Tonight, if you feel far from where you should be, remember this. Jesus can meet you on the road. He can meet you in a lonely room. He can meet you when your pillow feels like stone. He can speak peace where you expected only regret. Jacob woke and realized the Lord was in that place, though he had not known it. This is often true for us. God is present before we recognize Him. Grace is near before we name it. The place we thought was empty can become holy when our eyes open. Jacob set up the stone as a pillar. He called the place Bethel, a house of God. The road of fear became a place of worship. Then Jacob continued to the land of his relatives. He met Rachel at a well. He loved her. He worked 7 years to marry her, and those years seemed like only a few days because of his love. But Laban deceived Jacob. On the wedding night, Leah was given instead of Rachel. The deceiver was deceived. Jacob had used disguise in his father's tent. Now disguise was used against him. This is not accidental in the moral shape of the story. Jacob is learning what deception feels like when it wounds him. He then worked more years for Rachel. His family became complicated. Leah was unloved. Rachel was loved but struggled with barrenness. The home filled with rivalry, longing, jealousy, and children born into tension. This is not a clean family story. It is messy. It is painful. It is deeply human. And yet, God is still working. Leah, the unloved wife, is seen by the Lord. She bears sons. She names them with longing, hoping to be loved, hoping to be seen, hoping her husband's heart will turn toward her. But eventually, one of her names becomes praise. Judah is born. And from Judah's line, far in the future, Jesus will come. This is deeply beautiful. The Messiah's line moves through the unloved woman's praise. God sees the one others overlook. God places redemption where human affection failed. If you have ever felt like Leah, chosen second, loved less, noticed late, let this comfort you. God sees you. Human rejection cannot erase divine purpose. The person overlooked by people may still carry a holy place in the story of God. Rachel also suffered. She had Jacob's love, but not the children she longed for at first. This reminds us that every person carries a hidden ache. Leah had children but longed for love. Rachel had love but longed for children. Comparison blinds us to the truth that everyone has a wound. One person's blessing does not mean they have no pain. One person's beauty does not mean they have peace. One person's position does not mean they are whole. Jesus sees beneath comparison. He knows the ache under every life. Over time, Jacob's household grew. He worked under Laban. He faced changing wages and unfair treatment. But God blessed him. Eventually, Jacob knew it was time to return. The God who met him at Bethel had promised to bring him back. Now that promise was moving again. Jacob left with his family, flocks, and possessions. But fear followed him. He had to face Laban behind him. Then he had to face Esau ahead of him. This is how life sometimes feels. A painful past behind. An uncertain confrontation ahead. Jacob was afraid. He prayed. He reminded God of his promise. He admitted he was unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness he had received. He asked for deliverance from Esau. This prayer shows growth. Jacob is still afraid, but he is praying. He is still planning, but he is also depending on God. Faith does not always remove fear instantly. Sometimes faith brings fear honestly into the presence of God. That night, Jacob was left alone. A man wrestled with him until daybreak. Jacob struggled through the night. His hip was touched. He was wounded. Yet he held on. He said he would not let go unless he was blessed. Then his name was changed. No longer only Jacob. Now Israel. He had struggled with God and with humans and had overcome. This moment is holy. Jacob entered the night as a man known for grasping. He left marked, limping, and blessed. The limp was not a sign of defeat only. It was a reminder that his life had been touched by God. Some blessings leave us humbled. Some encounters with God do not make us look stronger in the world's eyes. They make us more dependent, more honest, more surrendered. Jacob could no longer run the same way. He had to walk differently. And that is grace. Jesus does not only forgive us. He transforms how we walk. The next day, Jacob saw Esau coming. He bowed. He approached with humility. But Esau ran to meet him. He embraced him. They wept. The brother who once wanted to kill him now received him. This was mercy Jacob could not control. He had prepared gifts. He had divided his household. He had feared the worst. But God had gone before him. This is a powerful comfort. Some meetings you fear may be softer than your anxiety predicts. Some situations you dread may be touched by grace before you arrive. Some hearts may be changed in ways you never saw happening. Reconciliation does not erase the past, but it opens a door where hatred could have ruled. Jacob and Esau did not become the same as before. Their paths remained different, but the moment of embrace showed that God can soften what bitterness once hardened. Jacob eventually returned to the land. He had wives, children, possessions, wounds, and promises. He was not the same man who left. He had seen God at Bethel. He had endured Laban. He had built a family through sorrow and rivalry. He had wrestled in the night. He had received a new name. He had faced his brother. The story of Jacob teaches us that transformation is often slow. God does not always change a person in one simple moment. He works through roads, dreams, disappointments, labor, family pain, fear, prayer, wrestling, and return. If you feel unfinished tonight, do not lose hope. Jacob was unfinished for a long time. Yet God stayed with him. Jesus stays with unfinished people. He is patient with the heart that still struggles. He is kind to the soul that still wrestles. He knows how to bless a life that walks with a limp. Part 4 rests here. Isaac shows us that the promise continues. Rebecca shows us how fear can twist love into control. Esau shows us the danger of trading the sacred for the immediate. Jacob shows us the long road from grasping to surrender. Leah shows us that God sees the unloved. Rachel shows us that every heart carries a hidden ache. The wrestling at night shows us that blessing can come with humility. And Jesus shows us the truest ladder between heaven and earth. Because in Him, God has come near. You do not need to climb to heaven through your strength. Christ has come down in mercy. You do not need to pretend your family story is perfect. God works in broken families. You do not need to hide your limp. Grace can turn even your wound into a testimony. Rest now. Let the old family pain soften in the presence of Jesus. Let comparison leave your heart. Let the fear of tomorrow become quiet. Let the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob remind you that His promise can survive human weakness. Prayer. Lord Jesus, bring peace to every family wound tonight. Heal the places shaped by fear, comparison, and regret. Teach this heart to trust your promise, and let this soul rest safely in the mercy of God. Tonight, let your heart become still one more time. As you rest, remember Jesus is near, even in the seasons that feel confusing and unfair. The story now turns to Joseph. A young man. A dreamer. a son loved deeply by his father, but also a brother surrounded by jealousy. Joseph was one of the sons of Jacob, now called Israel. His father loved him more than the others. This love was visible. It was not hidden. And because of this, the brothers began to feel resentment. Favoritism once again created tension inside the family. Joseph also had dreams. Dreams that showed his brothers bowing to him. Dreams that pointed to a future none of them understood. When he shared these dreams, the tension grew. His brothers did not receive his words with peace. They felt threatened. They felt anger. They felt something rising inside that they did not control. This is often how jealousy works. It takes something small and grows it into something destructive. It turns comparison into bitterness. It turns difference into division. It turns a family into a place of quiet hatred. Joseph did not fully understand what his dreams would cost him. He did not see the long road ahead. He did not know how deep the pain would go before the promise would rise. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers. They were far from home. When they saw him coming, something dark took shape in their hearts. They began to plan. At first, they wanted to kill him. Then one of them suggested throwing him into a pit instead. In the end, Joseph was sold to traders. He was taken away. The brothers returned home and deceived their father. They showed him Joseph's coat, covered in blood. Jacob believed his son was dead. This moment is heavy. Joseph lost his home. Jacob lost his son. The brothers lost their peace. A single act of betrayal spread pain in every direction. This is the reality of sin. It never stays in one place. It moves. It spreads. It touches many lives. Joseph was taken to Egypt, far from everything familiar, far from his father's love, far from his dreams. If we stop the story here, it looks like everything has gone wrong. The dreamer is in chains. The loved son is forgotten. The future looks broken. But there is a quiet sentence that changes everything. The Lord was with Joseph. Even in Egypt. Even in slavery. Even in the place he did not choose. God was with him. Tonight, hold on to this truth. God is not limited to the place where your life felt good. He is not only present in the moments that made sense. He is not only near when everything is working. He is with you in the place you did not plan. He is with you in the season that feels unfair. He is with you when you are far from what you expected your life to be. Joseph was sold to a man named Potiphar. He worked in his house. Over time, Joseph gained trust. Everything he did began to prosper. Not because the place was perfect, but because God was with him. This is a deep truth. Peace does not come only from environment. It comes from presence. If God is with you, even a difficult place can carry growth. Even a painful season can carry purpose. Even a quiet life can carry blessing. Joseph was given responsibility. He managed the household. He worked faithfully. But another test came. Potiphar's wife desired him. She tempted him again and again. Joseph refused. He said that doing such a thing would be a sin against God. This moment shows a different kind of strength. Not strength in power, but strength in purity. Not strength in fighting others, but strength in guarding the heart. Joseph could have hidden his actions. He could have justified himself. He could have taken what was offered. But he chose integrity. He chose obedience when no one was watching. This is what real faith looks like. It is not only public. It is private. It is not only when people see you. It is when you are alone. It is not only in success. It is in temptation. Joseph ran from the situation. But even then, he was falsely accused. He was thrown into prison. This is painful. He did the right thing and still suffered. This is where many hearts struggle. Why do good things not always lead to easy outcomes? Why does obedience sometimes lead to hardship? Why does integrity not always bring immediate reward? Joseph's life answers this slowly. God's plan is not always visible in the moment. Faithfulness is not always rewarded immediately. But God does not forget. Even in prison, the Lord was with Joseph. He found favor. He was put in charge of other prisoners. Responsibility followed him even into confinement. This shows that your calling does not disappear when your situation changes. Even if life places you in a small or restricted place, your character still matters. Your faith still matters. Your presence still carries something of God. In prison, Joseph met two men, a cupbearer and a baker. Both had dreams. Joseph interpreted them. One would be restored. The other would not survive. Joseph asked the one who would be restored to remember him. But when the man was released, he forgot Joseph. Time passed. Joseph remained in prison. This is one of the hardest parts of the story. Being forgotten. Being overlooked. Doing what is right, and still waiting. Helping others, and still being left behind. This is where many hearts grow tired. But even in forgotten places, God is still working. Time in God's hands is not wasted. Silence does not mean absence. Delay does not mean denial. After some time, Pharaoh had dreams. No one could interpret them. Then the cupbearer remembered Joseph. The forgotten man was remembered at the right moment. Joseph was brought before Pharaoh. He interpreted the dreams. 7 years of abundance. 7 years of famine. He advised Pharaoh to prepare. Pharaoh saw wisdom in him. Joseph was raised from prison to a place of leadership. In one moment, his position changed. From prisoner to ruler. From forgotten to trusted. From the lowest place to one of the highest. This is how God can work. He does not always lift slowly. Sometimes the shift comes suddenly. But it comes after preparation. Joseph's years in the pit, in the house, in the prison, all shaped him. He was ready for responsibility because he had learned faithfulness in small places. Tonight, remember this. Where you are now may be preparation. What feels like delay may be training. What feels like silence may be shaping your heart for something greater. The years of abundance came. Joseph managed wisely. Then the famine came. The land suffered. People came to Egypt for food. Among them were Joseph's brothers. They did not recognize him. But he recognized them. This is a powerful moment. The ones who heard him now stood before him. They were in need. They were vulnerable. Joseph had power. He could have taken revenge. He could have made them suffer. He could have reminded them of their cruelty. But instead, he tested their hearts. He observed them. He saw how they treated Benjamin. He saw their sorrow over the past. He saw something had changed. Then Joseph revealed himself. He wept. He spoke gently. Do not be afraid. You intended to harm me. But God intended it for good. To save many lives. This is one of the most beautiful truths in Scripture. God can take what was meant for harm and turn it into something that carries life. This does not mean the pain was good. It means God is greater than the pain. It does not mean the betrayal was right. It means redemption is stronger than betrayal. It does not erase the past, but it transforms the meaning of it. Joseph forgave his brothers. He invited them to live in Egypt. He provided for them. He restored relationship. This is grace. Not ignoring the wound, but choosing not to be ruled by it. Forgiveness does not say the pain did not matter. It says the pain will not define the future. Jesus teaches this same truth. He forgave those who hurt him. He offered mercy where judgment was deserved. He opened a way for hearts to be restored. If you carry pain from others tonight, this part of the story is for you. You may not be ready to fully forgive yet. You may still feel the weight of what happened. But let this truth rest gently in your heart. Healing is possible. Freedom is possible. Your story does not have to end in bitterness. Jacob, now Israel, came to Egypt. He saw Joseph again. The father thought dead met the son he had lost. This reunion carried deep emotion. Years of grief were touched by unexpected joy. Sometimes God restores what we thought was gone forever. Sometimes He writes endings we could not imagine. Jacob blessed his sons. He spoke over them. He came to the end of his life. Joseph continued to care for his family. After Jacob died, the brothers feared Joseph would now seek revenge. But Joseph spoke peace again. Do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. He reassured them. He spoke kindly. He lived out forgiveness over time, not just in one moment. This is important. Forgiveness is not only a decision. It is a way of living. It is choosing again and again not to return to hatred. Joseph lived a long life. He saw the growth of his family. Before he died, he spoke of God's promise. He reminded them that God would lead them out of Egypt one day. He asked that his bones be carried when that time came. Even at the end, Joseph held on to the promise. He did not cling to Egypt as his final home. He remembered that God's story was still moving forward. This is faith. To live in a place, but not forget the promise. To experience blessing, but not lose sight of God's greater plan. To rest in today, while trusting tomorrow to God. Part 5 comes to rest here. Joseph shows us that betrayal does not cancel purpose. Prison does not cancel calling. Delay does not cancel destiny. God is present in the pit, in the house, in the prison, and in the palace. He shows us that forgiveness is stronger than revenge. That healing is possible even after deep wounds. That God can turn what was meant for harm into something that carries life. And Jesus is the greater fulfillment of this story. He was rejected. He was betrayed. He suffered. Yet through his suffering, salvation came. Through his pain, life was given. Through his mercy, we are restored. Tonight, you are not alone. God is with you in every season. In the confusion. In the waiting. In the quiet. In the healing. In the unknown future. Rest now. Let the weight of your story become lighter in His presence. Let the past release its hold. Let the future rest in God's hands. Let Jesus bring peace to your heart. Prayer. Lord Jesus, bring healing to every wound in this heart. Teach this soul to trust your plan even in pain. Help it release every burden of the past, and let it rest tonight in the peace of God.